So, what does faith, science, and sisterhood all have in common? We're going a little bit off script today, but for a really good reason. I can't wait for you to see and hear from our special guest. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Excellence in Everything Live. I'm Lanita hosting, and if you are on this channel, that means you know that organizational leaders come to me when they're ready to build their confidence in communicating so that they can effectively lead their teams. And today we have a special guest who actually came to our very first public speaking one-on-one class and who since that time has launched some phenomenal things. Now, I'm not taking any credit for what God did in between that time and today, but I surely didn't want time to pass by before I got to share all of what God has done in her life and in the community by way of my good friend, former college colleague. Asha, introduce yourself to the world.
Hi, everybody. Well, thank you, first of all, Anita, for having me on this wonderful, wonderful podcast. I loved your platform. I'm always tuned in. But my
Thank
name is
you.
Asha Kabirou. Of course, I am the founder of Halaqah Tingz, which is a nonprofit organization geared towards increasing intellectual and spiritual growth for women here in the DMV area. I'm also a transformative speaker and a crazy coffee addict. So you'll hear more about the coffee later.
I love that you bring all of yourself to a space. You bring your love for coffee, your love for community, your faith. You bring your just who you authentically are. Can you walk us through a little bit? Why is it important for you to use your voice?
You know, I started using my voice since the moment my mom gave birth to me. So I've always been vocal. I think that over the years, I've learned that it's important to be intentional about how I use my voice. That started once I graduated from my master's program and I got my big girl job. And I was in the nation's most best that was in the best place where the health is being transformed throughout the entire nation. And in that moment, I knew I was in a pivotal role where I had to be able to communicate effectively, which I was able to. I moved into a different role, and in that particular role, I had a bigger job. Now, while the job was not necessarily of authority, I did have influence in a way that I had to learn about. Um, so I would say in those moments is when I realized I can still be me and still communicate the needs of not only the division, but also the community, my community, and all of those things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said so much. You know, some people come to a public speaking class because they want to use their voice. But you're saying, I've always been this girl. I've been her. You're probably coming for some technical support or just learning how to make it better, but you've always been using it. So I love that, your bravery. And then when it was time to level up or boss up, as we would say, you know, being more at the forefront or being leading a project, whether you have authority or influence, and both are important, also contributed to you wanting to use your voice more. So I love that. How does faith and science intersect in your world? Because you threw that in there a little bit in your intro, but tell us how they intersect.
Yeah. So as a bio major, growing up in science, the concepts of faith and science have always been separate. Any science major will tell you, they learn certain concepts, but when it comes to your faith, it's never really embedded unless you really had a professor or a teacher who was of faith and did not fear bringing them together. So over the past few years, while using my voice, I've decided to take the things that I love, science being one of them, and convey ways to intellectually and spiritually grow. So
Mm.
I have a book that's called The Invisible Hand, which is exploring the invisible and visible design in nature. That allows people to have conviction into something that's bigger than them. And that was really the purpose of that. But it shows you different ways how magnificent our world is and how yes, these concepts are real and true and scientifically proven, but it also allows us to see something deeper within ourselves. I'll
Mm.
give you an example. Cellular respiration. This happens within every single cell in your body. So it's controlling the breathing essentially inside of your cells, but you don't see that happen. Pollination. You don't see that happen either. You think you see it, but you don't. You might see a bee. You might see, no, I don't want to say a bat, but you could see a bat. But there are ways that pollen that travels, and the bees will do the
Mm.
process of creating honey, for an example. But you do not see pollination. But then there are things you can see. If you look at a mountain, the vastness, like sometimes I get teary eyed about it because it's so magnificently beautiful that this just didn't pop up there, you know? So I try to take the things that we see, the things that we don't see, and merge them into ways that we can not only just have conviction, but allow us to continue that growth, continue learning,
Mm.
and learn more about yourself and your growth and your journey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking about the things that we cannot see, that they still do exist. There's still power and truth to them. Um, Thank you for sharing that. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about like how you're using your voice to build and amplify community.
So I mentioned I have an organization called Halaqah Tingz. So one Ramadan, we were in my living room. I hosted what's called an iftar where we all break fast together. So I invited some girls over, they invited some girls over, and it was a huge amount of girls in my living room. And what do girls do? We chat, right? And that's essentially what was starting to happen. So we were discussing, what's Ramadan been like, and then also some of the things that we wanted in our own spiritual journey. The same theme continued to happen, which was we don't have a space where we can grow intellectually, spiritually, without all the
Mm.
judgment. And that's pretty much how it birthed. Now, if you remember me from college, like I don't hear a challenge and say, I can't do that. I take it on and I say, well, let's, if it's something that God put in front of me, I'm pretty sure it's something that He's equipped me with to be able to address whatever that challenge may be. That was a big challenge that I noticed, not just with the girls in my living room. This was across not just the DMV, everywhere. And I'm starting to notice that even more. People say, oh man, I wish we had this in this state, or I wish we had this in that state. But again, it's a space that's needed. So not only do we have monthly meetups in person, but we try to host things virtually as well for those who do need that kind of
Awesome.
space.
That's awesome. I can't imagine what it's like to be in that room, but one, I want to say thank you for showing up and supporting women and moms. I showed a graphic of the mental health awareness. I guess it's an event that you hosted, but it's so much that you do in the midst of being everything else, a mom, a wife, being serious about your career path. And, I just want to give you your flowers and thank you and say, like, thank you for showing up the way that you do. I say this all the time how, the domino effect of building your voice gives you audacity to show up in other spaces. You are living that example, like being liberated from fear of judgment or fear of inadequacies that basically cripple us from showing up how God wants to use us. So when we liberate ourselves from those things, God gets the glory and He gets to be amplified and exalted, and His work gets to take place. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, that was so beautiful. You just reminded me. I mean, I'm Jamaican, but Bob Marley, he has a line where he asks us to be liberated from that mental, um, deliver us and from the mental jail, basically, in our head. And you basically just said that. And it's so important. Like, we have to be able to continue that growth. There's so much in Islam. The first ayah that was revealed, or the first verse, was to read. And I keep that on the front of my head all the
Mm,
time. Read. Read
mm.
breeds intellect. It brings growth. All of those things. So you just
Yeah,
reminded me of that.
so good. In Christianity, biblical literacy is a thing. It is almost It's a dire need. And it just goes back to the concept of reading, people having an understanding of something. And so I appreciate that of that practice also being shared in your faith. And when you know some stuff, you show up differently. When
That's
you
true.
know something, you show up different. You make decisions differently, and so there's power in that. Okay, before we jump into the rapid fire questions, what's one habit that you use, because you talked about growth? What's one habit that you use to stay grounded and confident?
I would say being an active listener. That's always been tough for me because I always got something to say. But being an active listener is a tool that I truly use because it's allowing me to look for what's next. Maybe it'll also allow me to see things I wouldn't have thought of myself. Also, it stops me from having any kind of predetermined notions about what someone's going to say. And that
Mm,
allows that flow of a true conversation,
mm,
real communication. I don't even know if I should say real communication, but effective. So it
yeah.
allows you to be able to feed off what the next person is saying. But if you are actively listening, you are able to truly tap into what the other person is saying. Even if it's not the best way that they've said it, you can maybe pull out, okay, maybe they didn't mean it this way, but this is what they're trying to
Mm.
communicate. So that's been a tool that I've tried to use. I've been quick to say, what'd you say? Knowing that maybe they didn't really mean it that way. But it that comes with the growth. That active listening, it provides growth.
It does, and it's transferable in all of our relationships and how we show up in every area. So I love that. I think I'm a pretty good listener too, so I've been told. So I
You are.
appreciate that. Okay, rapid fire questions. Dun, dun, dun. When you came to the public speaking class, I remember you said that you were kind of like an army Swiss knife. So I ain't gonna tell the people. I mean, you tell the people what you meant by that before we jump into the rapid fire.
I could do anything. And I don't say that in a prideful way, but I know that God's blessed me with seeing something and saying I could do it.
Okay,
Yep.
rapid fire. What's a mom hack you absolute like? That's it. That's the one.
Preparation. You don't prep, those kids are gonna run on top of you. I have a lot of kids, so I have to be prepared with them. For the week, if it's a matter of all the clothes that you are wearing throughout the week is on this rack, if it's not on the rack, you're not wearing it. That saves me a thousand hours. I don't know. I should
That's
do a
so good.
calculation and see, but it saves a lot. Preparation. All of my kids are in different stages, so I have to prep for them differently.
Get into that prep. What inspires you when times and things get tough?
Prayer. I have to pray. I had one of those days today, and I said, I don't know if I'm gonna make it to the podcast today, but I prayed, and I'm okay.
Man, thank you, God. Yes.
Yes,
Ooh.
we
Oh,
thank
okay, let
God.
me just keep going. Let me just keep going. What's one scientific discovery that blew your mind when you think of it?
DNA, and that's
Mm,
probably cliche. It probably is cliche, but it has not been that long that we know everything about DNA or just the discovery in itself. But if you look at DNA in itself, there's so much. It's like so much can be coded. The DNA has decided the color of my skin, the
mm.
way I speak, any kind of genetic disorders. I
Wow.
know this is supposed to be rapid fire, but DNA, yeah,
Wow. I never even thought of it that way. So good. Between faith and science, which do you think gives us the most hope for the future?
faith. Everything is faith. Your foundation starts there. Um, Without faith, where's the works? What do you go off of? I love coffee. I can give you all the scientific whatever. I'm not a chemist, but I could tell you so much about this. Why you should brew it this way or that. But if I don't have faith, that God's going to keep me up and going, that coffee is not going to do anything for me. It really isn't.
Mm.
And now listen, I love my coffee. Talking about my baby right now. But it's not going to dictate how my day is going to go. Um, all of those things. Science can tell you there's no cure for XYZ. But did God say so?
So
What did
good.
God say? I mean, there's so much. You can have faith first, and those scientific concepts are the things that you can build off of. Learn them and find ways that they're transferable. There's so many. So yeah, science is cool, but faith is better.
Thank you. Beautifully said. As we wrap up, is there any last things that you would like to share with those who might be watching and might be inspired by your journey and or want to tap into some of the things that you're doing?
I would say everything doesn't have to be done traditionally. Um, Non-traditional roles, non-traditional routes are okay. I started out saying I was gonna be a journalist. I want to write. Then I want to be a doctor. Went in school, you know, went in the lab, didn't like the lab. Pre-med, got in the hospital, saw a few people unalived and was not okay. Um, but there were so many things that I had to learn in each space. I worked for a finance company. That has nothing to do with bio. But there were things and concepts that I learned there that equipped me as a business owner, how to manage money, all of those things. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say those non traditional routes, be okay with them because it's a
Mm-hmm.
journey. You may not know exactly where you're going, but that's when your faith comes in. You pray, you ask for discernment, you ask for guidance, you ask for those things, and be
Yep.
okay. Once you pray and ask for it, that's it. You just you move and let God take you where you're supposed to be. Non traditional routes, people. It's okay.
Non-traditional routes. You heard it from the Army Swiss knife herself, someone who is multifaceted, obviously multi-passionate and multi-skilled, showing up powerfully, using her voice not only in her community to help other women, but to also help those in the area of science and faith. Super, super. I admire Asha. I did when we were in college. So, I'm always amazed at what she's able to accomplish. And she's a reminder that there are no excuses. Push through. And I love that she showed up for the podcast. You know how many times I don't feel like coming up here? Too many to count. But like, I always talk about how growth happens in continuity. We rob ourselves of that growth when we decide, I don't feel like it today. Just tap into your strength. And Asha alluded to this. When she didn't feel like coming, she prayed. Type that in the comments. When I don't feel like doing something, I can pray. Type pray in the comments. We just need to bring back prayer as a normal act of like acknowledging and asking God to show up. Because that's simply what prayer is, just a conversation. Anyway, I'm rapping because I'm feeling very much my cup is filled from today. I know this podcast episode is not like any that we've never done, but there's always room for God. So let's just make that clear. And we're obviously making room for Him today. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I'll see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye now.